Hey guys, welcome back to ZBA 101 Boxing. We're going to talk about Canelo's career and basically rating him, uh, you know, scale of like grades, right? A plus would be the highest, um, F would be horrible. And I made this short clip about a couple of his fights that I thought were interesting or key moments in his career. I'll be putting play and reviewing and talking about it really briefly, and then I'll continue to talk about it more in detail once the clip is over. The first fight in this, put him in order, is the Cotto fight, the older brother, I believe, where Canelo got hurt for the first time. He ends up winning that fight. That first round was the only trouble he had. Then he has this Austin Trout fight. It was very close. That knockdown kind of ended up edging the fight for him. Then he ends up fighting Mayweather. Mayweather schools Canelo, and Canelo has a little feisty one. So when he gets frustrated, he sometimes resorts to those tactics. Here, then he's fighting Lara. This is a very close fight for him. A lot of people believe that Lara, should have won that fight. He's very slick, so and counterpuncher. Then there's this big fight for Canelo. I think this is probably one of his most emotional wins. After beating Miguel Cotto, he really becomes fighting one of the better fighters, a Hall of Famer, and beating him. Um, and then there's the Triple G fight, the first fight that became probably his most controversial win. Then there's the second fight, which is versus Triple G, where I felt that he actually edges out Triple G in this fight. Then Daniel Jacobs. Daniel Jacobs was coming in pretty strong. He had lost to Triple G, but a lot of people felt that was very close, or kind of Daniel Jacobs maybe I edged Triple G. Then there's the Kovalev fight. If that fight would have happened 4 or 5 years ago, Kovalev would have been heavily favored. People would have thought, oh, Canelo's going to die in there. But after the Andre Ward fight, which I attended live, the second fight, Ward knocked him out, and he's never been, the same. And I'm just going to put this video clip over and over. But reviewing his career, Canelo has had an issue with stamina in his fights. He fights in spurts, and he also gets tired. The longer the fight goes on, so he's not able to throw as many combos as he usually is, and that has really hurt him in those really competitive fights versus opponents that are at his level, or a little bit higher as well, right? So that's I think that his biggest flaw, and that's why a lot of his fights are become close. And people say, "Oh no, well, he might have lost that one, or the judges helped him in that one," and that might be the case or not. We're not. I'm not here to make that claim about how boxing may be corrupt or not, but it's more of his style. If Canelo would be a lot more dominating in his wins, they wouldn't have to be those issues, right? That first Triple G fight, he was fighting really well, and it was really competitive for like probably the first 6 rounds. Yeah, he was moving around a lot and evading a lot of the punches, and that caused Triple G to do a lot of jabs. But at the end of the day, he couldn't keep that up, and then Triple G just out jabbed him, for the rest of the fight. And I felt like Triple G ended up winning that fight. But and then you have in the second fight versus Triple G, where he ends up, taking that challenge that the coach, the trainer at that time of Triple G, told him, "Hey, let's fight Mexican style," and he ends up doing that and pushing back Triple G, and Triple G ends up looking old for the first couple of rounds. Towards the end of the fight, Triple G ends up, starting to throw a lot more punches, and it was a little bit closer, but I think he started way too late, and Canelo ended up, winning that second fight, and I think that's his biggest win in his career. The second biggest win in his career, I feel personally, is more the Daniel Jacobs fight, because I felt that he did win that fight convincingly, even though it was kind of boring. And I expected a lot more from Daniel Jacobs, because Daniel Jacobs had shown a lot more. He was tall, he was strong, he was fast. And I don't know if he was gun shy or it was something about the moment, but I thought he was going to give Canelo a lot more trouble. Probably his third biggest win was Miguel Cotto. Miguel Cotto was still a legitimate fighter right there at that time, but every time that Cotto try to push Canelo back. He wouldn't. Canelo, like, I really feel if Canelo had that energy and really motivation to knock out Cotto, he could have, because he would push him back every time he would throw power shots. Right? So Canelo has this issue of, like, now people criticizing him because he chooses the gloves, he chooses, or the weights, the rehydration clauses, and things are waits for people to late. I feel Canelo, he does fight great opponents or good opponents that a lot of people actually would think that he wouldn't fight, but he ends up fighting them, like, Austin Trout, Lara, Daniel Jacobs, even Triple G, even though he took a while. So it's not like he's afraid. I think the problem here is that he's not really honest at times what he wants to do. And when he says, "Hey, I want to unify 160," but then he won't fight Andrade Boo Boo, or Charlo, then that looks bad on him. So for me, I think he will be in A minus right now, because I don't consider him as great as, Juan Marquez, or Eric Morales, Marco Antonio Barrera, or Julio Cesar Chavez, right? They had this mentality like, let's get it, let's fight. Who's in front of me? And Canelo has, like, oh yeah, well, I'm the A side. You have to have these conditions to fight me, and he learned that from Mayweather, because he saw how it worked for him, and he earned that right. But for me, I feel like if he just communicates, hey, I will unify, give me one fight to do a tune up, and then I'll fight them, and I feel like that will give the crowd a little bit more of, like, understanding or a plan, right? And he will be committing to some of those fights. But just being honest, and if he's not gonna fight them, then say, you know what, I'm gonna move up to this next weight class. I feel like I've done enough, and then move forward. But fight real opponents, not Rocky Fieldings, right? We don't want to be sold on fighters or fights that are not worth it at the end of the day. Kovalev, that fight would have been amazing, and that would have been a great accomplishment if, Kovalev, even if he would have fought Kovalev after the Underworld fight, right? Because Kovalev still would have been considered one of the better, but Kovalev had shown a couple fights that he wasn't the same, and yeah, he won a couple fights there, but he looked so just not like older, and just not the same power, right? Not the crusher. Um, so I think he has that criticism. Doesn't have the Mexican style of, like, he's more of a counter puncher. So he will not be liked by many in Mexico. A lot of the media, like, attacks him and says that he has been, it's too into details, like he's babied, or he's too luxurious at this point. But I think he does not get enough credit from them as well. And then he will be a future Hall of Famer. He can continue to improve his legacy. He can still make unifications at 168 or 175 if he really wants to. I think 168 or 160 would be the best place where to do it. But his following hasn't really been there. It's kind of hard to gauge now with him being part of the zone, because there's no actual pay-per-view numbers, and it's hard to tell. And then all this COVID-19 thing that happened really threw a wrench into boxing lately, and there's not certainty of what's going on or the fights they won. They can't really put live gates, and that plays a big role sometimes in how much money they make, but can also be nullified by maybe potentially a lot more people wanting to see him, but then a lot of people just stream together. So there's a big issue there, but I do hope that Canelo really starts fighting better opponents, and he can raise that A plus status and rating in his career if he fights those opponents. And if he continues fighting pure, Amir Khans, people on their lower weight classes that shouldn't be fighting him, then maybe it could be done to a B plus or B. But he will always, I think, struggle with an opponent that is in his prime to look convincingly to beat him. I think Daniel Jacobs, the only reason he didn't look better is because he was gun shy. once he started fighting and throwing a little bit more, he was doing a lot better, and that fight could have been a lot closer. So if someone comes in and they're in their prime and goes at it to Canelo, um, just like James Kirkland did, but if James Kirkland would have been in his prime or better skills, that fight might have been a lot different, right? So that's the people who make Canelo look bad, even if they're not the slick fighter like Lara. But those fighters, slick fighters, are also very dangerous for Canelo because he doesn't have that expertise of constant pressure. He cannot keep up with that. And whenever he fights those fighters, he's gonna look bad. Or even when he fights those elite fighters, where it needs to engage in a lot of pressure or counter punching or just a lot of volume punching, he is not gonna look his best. But his defense has improved a lot, and I think he does have a pretty good defense, and he will be a future Hall of Famer. With that, please comment down below, subscribe, and like the video. Thank you, guys.